It's all you, buddy.
Yeah, you know, my hat goes off to Momo there. I would not want to be next to Clint, especially in the dark. But let's talk about how Mindfreak was actually able to get their first series win. We knew going into this one, someone was going to get their first win at the LAN League.
Mindfreak, yeah, you thought it was going to be Vitality.
I did think it was going to be Vitality, but they did get their first map win. But let's take a top-down look. Let's look at map number 1 first. And I think the main thing that you wanted to talk about there, Chance, is the fact that Fida just really did go off.
Yeah, no, Fida had an absolutely fantastic performance. I can't even remember how kills he got, but he was running them up. I think he at least doubled on streaks, so had a massive performance. I will say Vitality were basically playing 3v4 for like half the game, and I think that goes a long way for Mindfreak again to earn the streaks, but both the hardpoints Mindfreak wins, and I think stylistically there's either just, you know, improvements all the way around or an outright change, because I was ragging on Buzz a while back for just not being as involved as I thought he could, but there you even see early on, not the most time in his hill, but he's up there and he's got a good KD, had 14 kills, and he finishes, I'm pretty sure, with most time in the hill. So Buzzo, much more involved than he has been, at least in week 1, and I think it really shows.
Yeah, I think the big thing is, too, once Mindfreak is able to get some streaks, you can sort of see their teamwork come through. They use them at the correct times. They're able to use them smartly to break kills and setups. Again, this Mindfreak team, they have a ton of experience, a ton of talent. It's just they're not able to do it against the top North American talent, even, you know, European talent. We haven't seen it yet. You finally saw a glimpse of it last night. But typically when they go on their Sunday runs, it's typically for top 16, top 12, and they're playing teams around this Vitality sort of level, and you can see they do have the sort of talent to outdo them.
Now, obviously, you can say at this level they do tend to compete very well.
Yep.
In this respawn in particular, because we saw them play against a high-caliber team yesterday, do you think that we're starting to see maybe a little bit out of them that they might be able to compete with these higher level teams before we start talking about map number 2?
Well, I think it's confidence, right? I mean, how many times do they go into a series and they're down 0-1, 0-2 before, what, after 20 minutes, and then they get themselves in a rut? It's a lot of, you know, it's mentally draining to continue to come back onto the stage, get your butt whipped over and over again against these top, you know, world-class teams. But I think a win like this, a performance from against Team Caliber that they had last night will definitely help them overall.
Now, back to this series, we're going to take a look at the second map that actually went down. Before we even jumped into it, we knew that the S&D was going to be a very important place for Vitality to make their stand, but ultimately, we really still kind of see the Mindfreak show, Chance.
Yeah, Mindfreak finally closed it out, and I think it's just because individually, the situations that Mindfreak put themselves in were great. This one here, Shox in a 1v2. Riskins gets basically pinned behind this car, and he just wide peeks out and gets caught. So kind of just hands away that first kill to Shox, and then Shox is like, all right, I tagged this guy up mid. Bomb's planted for this side. He's either going to come through mid or he's going to wrap. No one shows up in mid-map for 10 seconds. He makes the perfect read on the play, and frankly, it was a bit of an easy 1v2 for him. But overall, I think the positive Vitality, they handled a couple opening breaks well. They made a couple strategy reads. Whalers, I think, flying through middle map. He picked off, I think it might have been Dens trying to watch the flank. Knew where he was going to be, but overall, Mindfreak, again, just even individually, a little bit stronger in the search.
I put a big stress on Riskin needing to be that player to go off for Vitality when I actually did make my prediction, which ultimately wasn't correct, but Riskin still was that player who really did show up for his team of Vitality, 8 and 7 there, and most kills on Team Vitality, and we saw that before they even went into the series. He was number 9 on the leaderboard for the most kills per round.
Yeah, I mean, Vitality, you know, the games that we've seen, they've taken basically 3 to 4 rounds almost every search and destroy. They just haven't been able to really complete a game. But when you have a player like Shox going 11 and 2, it's obviously a very hard map to win.
Yeah, they've definitely had a difficult time converting over in Vitality's court, but when they get into map number 3, sparks start flying and they look really good in this. Yeah.
The game was wild. I like sneezed, and by the time I looked back up, the score was like 2-1, and then both teams had streaks. So like literally the first minute and a half of that game was absolutely wild, and it didn't really slow down either. Like the pace that Vitality was playing at was pretty intense as well, and they played it overall very, very soundly, consistently pushing together as a team. The biggest problem they had is Xerox had a slow start. I think he was like 1-8, 1-9, but he completely turned the game around for his team. So they go from being down a flag or two, and they end up winning, what, like 4 or 5 to 3?
Yeah, and I think the big thing was, though, for me, if you're Mindfreak, you go up 2-0, you have a streak, you have a couple of streaks. You shouldn't be able to just blow that lead that quickly. I mean, obviously, you have players like Whalers going on the offensive, and I think, as you said, Xerox had a slow start. starts to bring it around. But if you're Mindfreak, you have to slow the game down. Let the game come to you. You can't allow a 2-0 lead to slip, against the best teams in the world.
Yeah, and you talk about the streak usage that Mindfreak should have been able to slow him down for it. There's a situation where, Vitality pulling the flag, coming over through the top street side of things, and the artillery barrage is there. Zayrox spawned up with his teammates you see on the top side of there. He runs straight through the artillery, like he hugs the edge, but he somehow manages to get through. So runs through the artillery and then picks up a 3-piece. So he goes from having a slow start to literally running through just hellfire raining down from the sky and making big plays. So the streaks were almost there for Mindfreak, but again, when Zayrox is just making plays, at least in the later half of the game, not much you can do.
Yeah, I think a great showing from Whalers as well. He was he basically is the star on this team, coming into the Pro League, even the open events. There was a lot of talk about how will Whalers perform on an international level. You finally saw a glimpse of it here.
Yeah, I remember even in the last title talking about Whalers kind of building some teams, talking about maybe even moving over to the NA, things like that. Whalers kind of expecting him to be the backbone of the team. But looking at that map, it definitely was intense. The next one also very intense, down to the wire when we actually do get over to this map number 4. It's Hardpoint on London Docks. And Chance, I mean, this one, I thought Mindfreak should be able to close this one out relatively quickly, but Vitality definitely puts up a fight.
Yeah, and at the start, this is going to get very detail-oriented, but I think Vitality did quite a few small things right. It was on this hill, actually, specifically where, one, Maul's very, very early on. He's trying to do his best to lock down the spawns. Things don't end up working out, but he helps buy his team 10 to 15 seconds just by distracting Mindfreak. But there's also a situation where I think it might have been Zayrox. He pushed for the 1v1 for 15 seconds of scrap over on the Sandbags Hill, and generally speaking, it just sounds ideally bad. You don't want to push for a little bit of scrap. You want to get the rotations for next, but his teammates were already there. So he finds himself in a situation where he's like, well, I know there's a guy in Hill, so I can leave my teammates in the 3v3, and so if I just buy us a couple extra seconds, I'll spawn to the next hill before the guy that's in the hill will be there, and that's a good situation because then we'll have the 4v3. Or if I win that gunfight, then not only do I stop Mindfreak from getting 15 seconds, but I get 15 of my own, and that's a 30-point swing. So I think that's something that TK does a very good job of. It's evaluating when you can have that one guy to fight for just a little bit of scrap time that can turn into those 10, 15, 20-point swings that go a long way as the game continues. Of course, though, out of the details that Vitality did well, Mindfreak completely turned up on the end. I think on the Bears Hill, they kind of destroyed him. Shox had a moment where he just ran through the entire team of Vitality. So ultimately, Mindfreak, again, their hardpoint looks a lot better, a little bit too strong.
I think that's a really important point to bring up, though. I think that's one of the things that we've seen TK do the best, and when we try to figure out what makes them such a strong team, they'll fight for 10 seconds, and sometimes we'll see someone like Chino able to grab those 10 seconds even by himself, and that's just such a huge play. Now, that series, that's the first one of the day. We have that in our rear view mirror, but